Welcome back to our English podcast. In the last episode, we learned about one of the most famous moments in Helen's life. Anne Sullivan placed Helen's hand under cold water from a pump while spilling the word water into her other hand. Suddenly, Helen understood that the movements on her hand were not just random signs, they were words, and every word had meaning. That single moment changed everything. For the first time, Helen realized that the world around her had names. She finally understood that people could communicate through language. A door that had always been closed suddenly opened. Helen was only 7 years old, but her desire to learn became stronger than ever. The day after learning the word water, Helen could not stop asking questions. She wanted to know the name of everything she touched. She picked up a cup and spelled C-U-P. Helen smiled. She touched a tree and spelled T-R-E-E. Then she touched the ground, flowers, leaves, stones, and even the family dog. Every object became a new lesson. Every new word became another key that unlocked the world. Helen learned faster than anyone expected. She remembered every new word because she had waited so many years to understand the world around her. Before meeting Anne Sullivan, Helen often became angry because she could not express her feelings. Now everything was different. Whenever she wanted to know something, she simply reached out her hand and gently spelled the new word into her palm. Little by little, Helen's frustration disappeared. Her curiosity became stronger than her anger. She no longer felt trapped inside silence. She had discovered the power of language. Every morning, Helen woke up excited to learn something new. She never thought learning was boring for her. Every lesson was an adventure. She wanted to know the names of people, places, animals, flowers, food, and even feelings like happiness, sadness, love, and hope. Anne Sullivan understood that Helen learned best through real experiences. Instead of sitting inside a classroom all day, Anne took Helen outside. Nature became Helen's classroom. The trees became her books. The wind became her teacher. And every touch became a new opportunity to learn. Sometimes Anne placed Helen's hands on the roof bark of a tree. Sometimes she let Helen touch soft flowers' petals. Sometimes they walked together through gardens, fields, and forests. As Helen explored each new object, Anne patiently spelled every new word into her hand. Learning was no longer just studying, learning became part of Helen's everyday life. And without realizing it, Helen was preparing herself for a future that no one thought was possible. Helen's vocabulary grew every single day. One word became 10. 10 words became 100. Soon, Helen knew the names of many things around here. But Anne Sullivan wanted to teach her something even more important. She wanted Helen to understand that language was more than just the names of objects. Words could describe actions. Words could describe feelings. Words could describe ideas. One day, Anne asked Helen to hold a flower. Helen gently touched its soft petals and spilled the word flower into her hand. Then Anne gave the flower to Helen's mother. As Helen felt the flower leave her hands, Anne spelled another word give. Helen stopped for a moment. She repeated the action again and again. Slowly, she understood that give was not an object. It was an action. This was a big step. Now Helen was learning verbs, not only nouns. Every day brought a new discovery. She learned words like run, open, close, eat, drink, laugh, and love. Each word helped her understand life more clearly. Anne also taught Helen about emotions. When Helen hugged her mother, Anne spelled the word love. When Helen felt excited after learning something new, Anne spelled the word happy. When Helen cried after making a mistake, Anne gently introduced the word sad. For the first time, Helen could give names to her own feelings. This made communication much easier instead of becoming frustrated. she could express herself through words. Her confidence grew stronger every week. Helen also began asking more difficult questions. She wanted to know why birds singing. She wanted to know why seasons changed. She wanted to know where rain came from. Anne did not simply give short answers. She encouraged Helen to think. She wanted Helen to become curious, independent, and confident. Sometimes learning was difficult. Some ideas were hard to understand because Helen could not see or hear them, but she never gave up. If she did not understand something for the first time, she asked again. If she still did not understand, Anne patiently explained it in another way. Their relationship became stronger every day. They were no longer just teacher and student, they had become true partners on an amazing journey of learning. Together, they were proving that determinations, patience, and hope could overcome challenges that once seemed impossible. At the end of each day, Helen had learned something new, and with every new lesson, her dream of understanding the world came closer to becoming reality. As the weeks passed, Helen's world became bigger and brighter. She was no longer learning only from objects around her. Now she wanted to read. Anne Sullivan introduced Helen to books with raised letters that she could feel with her fingertips. At first, reading was slow. Helen carefully moved her fingers over each letter. She needed time to understand every word. But she never complained. She believed that every page brought her one step closer to a new world. Soon, reading became one of her favorite activities. She loved stories about nature, brave people, and faraway places. Although she could not see the pictures, she created beautiful images in her own imagination. Her mind became her window to the world. Anne also taught Helen how to write. It was not easy. Helen first used a special writing board that helped her place letters in the correct position. She carefully traced each letter. Sometimes she made mistakes. Sometimes the letters were not clear, but she kept practicing. Day after day, her writing improved. The first time Helen read a complete sentence by herself, she felt incredibly proud. It was a small sentence, but it meant everything to her. For the first time, she could share her own thoughts with other people. She was no longer trapped inside her own mind. Words had become her voice. Helen's family watched her progress with joy. Only a short time earlier, they had worried that she would never be able to communicate. Now they saw a happy, curious little girl who wanted to learn every single day. They were amazed by her determination. Visitors also noticed the change. Many people came to meet Helen and Anne. They could hardly believe how much Helen had learned in such a short time. She called it a miracle. But Anne Sullivan knew the truth. It was not magic. It was the result of patience, hard work, and Helen's endless desire to learn. Every lesson built on the one before it. Every challenge made Helen stronger, and every success gave her the confidence to dream even bigger. Soon, Anne began thinking about Helen's next challenge. She believed Helen was ready for something new, something that would test everything she had learned so far. It was time for Helen to begin her journey into formal education. But would a school be ready for a girl who could neither see nor hear? As Helen continued to learn, Anne Sullivan realized that her student was ready for a bigger challenge. Learning at home had given Helen a strong foundation. Now, it was time for her to experience education in a new environment. The idea of sending Helen to school made many people nervous. Some believed it would be too difficult. Others wondered how a girl who could not see or hear could study with other children. But Anne believed in Helen. She knew that Helen's determination was stronger than any obstacle. Before Helen entered a new school, Anne continued to prepare her every day. They practiced reading, writing, spelling, and expressing ideas. Anne wanted Helen to become as independent as possible. She also taught Helen good habits. Helen learned to be patient. She learned to listen with her hands. She learned to ask questions whenever she didn't understand something. Most importantly, she learned that making mistakes was a natural part of learning. Helen accepted every challenge with courage. She was never afraid of trying again. Sometimes a lesson was difficult. Sometimes she felt tired after hours of study, but every morning she was ready to begin again. Her love of learning became stronger with each passing days, and often reminded Helen that education was not only about books, it was about understanding people, solving problems, and discovering new ideas. This lesson stayed with Helen for the rest of her life. As the months passed, Helen became more confident. She could communicate with her family easily. She could write short messages. She could read simple books with her fingers. She could ask thoughtful questions and understood more complex answers. The little girl who had once lived in silence and confusion was changing into a confident learner. People who met Helen were surprised by her curiosity. She wanted to know everything. She asked about animals, mountains, oceans, history, and even the stars. Her disability had not reduced her desire to learn. If anything, it had made that desire even stronger. Anne smiled whenever she saw Helen's excitement. She knew this was only the beginning. Very soon, Helen would leave the safety of home and take another important step toward her future. A new chapter of her life was about to begin, and it would bring both exciting opportunities and difficult challenges. Helen had come a long way. Only a short time earlier, she had lived in a world without language. Now she could write, read, and communicate with the people around her. Every new word gave her more confidence. Every new lesson gave her more hope. Anne Sullivan was proud of her student, but she knew that Helen's journey was far from over. There were still many things to learn. There were still many dreams to achieve. Helen often thought about the future. She wanted to read more books. She wanted to meet new people. She wanted to understand the world beyond her home. Most of all, she wanted to keep learning. Her family watched her with great pride. They remembered the little girl who had once been angry and frustrated because she could not communicate. Now they saw a younger learner who smiled every day and welcomed every new challenge. Anne Sullivan had done much more than teach Helen words. She had helped Helen discover confidence, hope, and purpose. Their friendship grew stronger every year. Together, they proved that patience, kindness, and determination can change a person's life. Helen also discovered something important about herself. She realized that her disability did not define her future. It was only one part of her life. Her courage, curiosity, and hard work would define who she became. This belief gave her the strength to dream bigger than ever before. Soon, a new opportunity appeared. Helen would continue her education in a real school. The lessons would become more difficult. The expectations would become higher. Many people still doubted that she could succeed. Some believed she had already reached her limits, but Helen was ready to prove them wrong. With Anne Sullivan by her side, she stepped toward a future filled with challenges, hope, and endless possibilities. In the next episode, we will follow Helen as she enters the school, faces new obstacles, and continues her incredible journey toward becoming one of the most inspiring women in history. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, keep learning English with us. Remember, every new word you learn opens another door to a brighter future. See you in the next episode.